Hi everyone. My name is Yulia Moiseeva and I'm a registered migration agent. Today my life will be dedicated to student visas. I will talk about student visas, guardian visas associated with parents who are coming with children. And then I will touch upon postgraduate visas as well and briefly about pathways for students. So before we begin, a little bit about ground rules for this live. So I'm happy to answer questions dedicated to student visas or guardian visas or postgrad visas. Please leave your questions in the chat. I will be giving you some information. So I will be talking myself and then I will be happy to attend any questions from the chat box. So I run my migration practice and been running it since 2010. My office is located on the Gold Coast, Queensland, and me and my team, we are dealing with all of the visas except protection and refugee visas. So in our practice, we are working closely together with educational providers and our enrollment partners. So we're not educational agents ourselves. However, we always start our interaction with clients from the strategic planning because student visa is a costly option to come to Australia, and you really need to understand what are your prospects after you completing course. So whether you will get postgraduate visa or not. So what are your goals to come to Australia? Why are you coming to Australia on student visa? You need to be aware of all associated costs to plan your pathways, and you have to be aware of all the pathways available for students, because just coming on a student visa and just finishing any course will not automatically make yourself eligible for PR. So that's the rule. We have certain changes in July 2024, where department blocked the students from repeating their study after 485 visas were granted, or also the department blocked the pathway for visitor visa holders to come to Australia and then apply for student visa while in Australia. So that's no longer valid. Hence, you will have the opportunity to come on a student visa. And then, for example, once your student visa is about to finish, then you need to make your bold decision what's going to be your next strategic smart move. The reason for that is you can either consider graduate visa if you are set for further steps, and I'll talk about this later, or if nothing is happening, you may be able to extend your student visa to another course. But again, it needs to be aligned with whole strategy that you're planning for your case. So briefly about student visas, you can study at school on student visas. You can study just English course, ELICAS. You can study at vocational college, universities, bachelor degree, masters by coursework, and research degrees. Student visa comes with the requirements of genuine student, where basically not only department, but also educational institutions where you're going to be enrolling yourself will be looking at student profile. So what does that mean? It's going to be a variety of factors you're going to be assessed upon. Some of them are country of passport. Unfortunately, it's biased by country of passport. Then it's going to be your overall background. So your previous education, your previous work experience, if you are sharply changing your career moves, why you're doing that, etc., etc. Level of your English. Then what are you planning to study in Australia? For example, if you have bachelor degree background and all of a sudden you're doing vocational study or claiming that you will be doing vocational study, that's going to be a potential concern from the educational provider and later on from the department, because that's a sharp downgrading. Then it's going to be information about your financial requirements. So how you're going to be sustaining yourself for your first year in Australia. So the requirement for student visa usually is to show at least 1 year of living expenses, tuition, and approximate cost of your ticket back from Australia. So that's the minimum. However, some universities, based on country profile, may request 2 years of financials at the time of enrollment. That's interesting observation coming from us. When you're going to be moving through the process of student visa, so the process usually looks the following. If we dealing with clients, we get strategic consultation very first step to understand the needs of the student, what do they want to pursue as a career, etc., etc. Then we select with the student location of their study, level of the study, universities, college, etc., and then the process of enrollment begins. While the process of enrollment is happening, because it may take several weeks, usually on the background, all the documents for student visa application will be prepared pending confirmation of enrollment. So during the enrollment process, usually it's documents-based assessment. In some schools, if it's a private school, it may be a Zoom or any video call interview. Majority of universities and colleges does not require any interview. Once the assessment is done, and if the student have an opportunity to get letter of offer, this is your main document that basically shows your relationship, formal relationship between yourself and university. So in the letter of offer, it will be all the requirements you as a student must satisfy, including your obligations. And also it's going to be all the information about the course, costs of the course, further steps. So you need to read this document mindfully and carefully. If you agree with all the conditions, you're signing this document and paying deposit to educational institution. At the same time, you will be arranging student visa insurance. This insurance will have to cover the whole period of your stay in Australia, and you cannot pay it by installment. You will be unpleasantly surprised how much it's going to cost this insurance for family. So it's nearly 25,000 per 2 years of being in Australia on student visa. So be mindful on that, because the longer you stay in Australia and the more people will be in your application, the cost of student visa insurance will be higher. And as I said, this insurance needs to be paid before the application is approved. In case if by any chance the application is refused, the insurer will have to reimburse and refund the cost in full. So don't be too scared. So they will not charge nothing extra. For the university, if there's going to be a rejection on the student visa, the universities may charge some fees based on letter of offer. So when you're getting letter of offer from educational provider, as I said, that's the main document, and you will have to look at it very carefully, specifically in terms of any refunds and financial matters. Then, if, for example, the child is traveling to study at school in Australia, one of the parents, or if it's two children, two parents may arrange guardian visa. So guardian visa is usually fit for parents who are accompanying children, and the children must be under 18. So usually it's throughout the years of schooling. Student visa is linked to guardian visa. And as I said, normally one parent, one student. So two parents, really not logical for one student to be guardian, but usually one parent, one student will work. And then some requirements for guardian visa is that guardian will have to provide police clearances for each country where they lived for 12 months or more in the space of last 10 years. Then the guardian will have to provide financials as well for the first year. And the guardian will have to arrange insurance, slightly different insurance, not student visa insurance, visitor visa cover, where they have to pay for the first year at least. Then, because these two visas are linked together, so usually school visas may be issued, say, for 3 years, max 5 years, and then guardian visa is usually issued for the same duration. Then, on the guardian visa, the holder of this visa cannot work in Australia, so there is work restriction. They cannot apply for any other visas while in Australia on guardian visa. So, for example, they can go overseas and apply for another visa and then come back on the guardian visa. But they can extend the guardian visa from Australia. So that's not a problem. For example, if a student and the guardian receive 3-year visa and the student is still under 18, then you can extend both visas. Usually, a lot of people sending their families to Australia, say wife and children are coming to Australia to mind children who are at school, and at the same time, the main breadwinner is running a business or sitting overseas and funding that exercise. So when we're talking about considering what sort of course to study, there is a lot of misconception about ELICOS course, and a lot of people are choosing that pathway, I would say, in order to come to Australia quick enough. So sometimes it will not work, and sometimes department may be very biased and will not allow people to come and study English only in Australia. So ELICOS course can give you an opportunity to go through general English. So that's pretty much courses about talking about everyday life, etc., etc. So it's less structured, I would say. Then you have an opportunity to have English for academic purpose 1 and 2. So those English courses, English for academic purpose 1 and 2, usually goes by blocks of 3 months. And then you may have an opportunity to study preparation for IELTS testing course or any other specialty courses within English domain. So for those who are aged and already have, say, prior qualification, I would not recommend considering only general English for the longest duration, because department may not like this idea and may not consider that genuine student. Because on being on ELICOS study, the applicant will have part-time work rights, 24 hours per week or 48 hours per fortnight, where the department may pretty much consider the arrangement of coming on student visa with arrangements to go into work in Australia instead of studying. So a lot of people unfortunately do that, and department is fully aware, and then the bias may happen. When you coming on ELICOS alone, so only ELICOS course, you need to be mindful what's going to be your next steps and next application. Because even if you get the visa for 1 year studying English, this year will fly very quickly, and then you may run out of money. And if you're going to be considering again application for another student visa, you'll have to come again to that point that you will need to show your financials, etc., pay for insurance, pay for university, and then you have to prepare those costs. My suggestions always to start studying English in the home country, because coming on student visa to study English only, it's a pretty costly exercise. And this day and age, you don't have to study in person. There is a variety of ways when you're studying online, and it's maybe more efficient than coming to Australia. So start learning way prior, before you come to Australia on student visa. And then it makes it potentially better if you consider packaging the course, the vocational course or educational at university with English if you stuck at a certain level. But if you are absolutely not prepared, I would say no vocational education provider or university will offer you such a long package with English and program. So if we're talking about enrollment in vocational study, in general, it will be at least 4.5, 5 IELTS academic or equivalent. For some programs, for example, nursing, it's going to be compulsory IELTS 7 academic in each section or equivalent, because that's going to be a requirement for the industry placement. So we can't avoid that or cannot replace it with a package. In terms of universities, the bottom line can be around 5.5 IELTS academic or equivalent test. And then universities at their discretion may offer you packaged course. So again, to reduce costs, I would go with absolute minimum requirements for enrollment and get it done in your home country, then enroll into study course rather than into English alone. Because English on its own will not get you nowhere, apart from waste of your money and potential time. But if you didn't figure out anything within this year, then you have to progress to student visa again with associated costs. When we're talking about whether it's any age limitation on student visa, you can study pretty much at any age, and there is no upper limit, but you need to be mindful what are you going to be doing next and whether you're going to be eligible for graduate visa, because that's important when you're planning your pathways to permanent residency. If you're studying an eligible vocational course that will lead to occupation from the eligible list, and this course will satisfy Australian study criteria, and you will be under 36, so 35 inclusive, at time of lodgement of your graduate visa, unless you are Hong Kong citizen or British national overseas passport holder, where the limit is under 50. So you have to be mindful whether you will get your 485 visa or not. For this visa, apart from completion of eligible course, the applicant will have to sit English test within the 12 months before lodging the application. So that changed. Before that, any test would do, and there was lower level on the English test. Now the level is slightly higher, and the applicant have to have a, results within 12 months prior to lodgement. So post-vocational 485 visa is usually issued for 18 months, and it cannot be renewed or extended. So bear that in mind. If the applicant is finishing university, again, satisfying the Australian study requirement, which is 92 weeks of registration of the course, at least 16 months of physical study in Australia on the eligible visa, and this study will be in English. So in this case, the applicants will have to be again under 36, 35 inclusive, unless Hong Kong or British national overseas passport holders under 50, pass the English in the last 12 months before lodgement, and if this study happened in regional Australia, there is an opportunity to extend the 485 visa if the applicant continue staying in regional Australia. So that's an option there. And again, that's part of the planning when you're going to be originally discussing your strategic plan, what occupation you'll be interested in, what career pathway you will be interested in, and where you're going to be studying, what location. So that's something to consider. Because apart from that, you need to consider whether in that specific location it will be opportunities to find relevant work. For example, because if you're going to study IT in Tasmania, that's a very less opportunities to find IT related positions in that state, because there is not many. If we're talking about, okay, I would like to become an IT specialist, so it's Sydney, then Melbourne, and potentially Brisbane, and then all the rest because of the lower options to get the position. When we're talking about next pathways, apart from student visa and graduate visa, so depending on the student's circumstances, it can be partner visa. If a student finished the study, found a partner, and they can apply for partner visa. In majority of cases, as I mentioned in the beginning, if, for example, the student is finishing eligible study to have 485 visa, but then there is no work in the nominated occupation, maybe there is a consideration point where the student needs to continue study or get 485 now or later after second course, because 485 can be granted for primary applicant once, unless it can be extended for regional, obviously, areas. And then it is a consideration, because if you get 485 visa, you will not be able to jump back on student visa at all. Therefore, it's a part of planning. So I would encourage students to try to find any opportunities to go through career centers, any help through your educational providers to actually get any support to get through the industry and build a career while you are studying. So don't wait until you're finishing and then see, oh, what are my options? Because time flies very quickly, and you're going to be using and wasting time on 485 without relevant work. So as I said, if the relevant work is not happening, you don't have money, and you're getting 485 visa, the potential pathway may be just to look for the partner. For those who are going to be building a career, then you're going on a student visa knowing that you're going to be eligible for 485, and then you build your case on 485, getting your work experience and further. For those who may not be eligible for 485 visa due to age, as an example, you can still consider 500 student visa, but then the question would be what's going to be next, and then majority of people would need to find an employer and get employer-sponsored visa during time on student visa to secure your PR pathway. So do not make this rash decision to get into any provider and then just get student visa simply to come to Australia and then I'll sort my problems. So that's not going to work well. If two people are coming as a family, I would like to know that depending on the level of study, it will be different work arrangements. If, for example, two people, husband and wife, are coming and one is studying ELICAS English course, then both of them will have restricted work rights, 48 hours per week. So normally I would suggest 48 hours per fortnight, 24 hours per week. And usually I suggest to make it at least 20 hours per week consistently for any future needs, if you need to claim this work experience. For vocational study, the same story, 48 hours per fortnight requirements for work. So it's going to be restricted work. Bachelor degree, the same story. Master degree, the primary applicant has a restriction. The secondary applicant does not have any restriction. If we're talking about master degree by research or PhD, both applicants have unlimited work rights. Another note, a lot of people think that if they will arrange ABN sole trader and will be working on their own ABN, they can work a lot of hours regardless of the student visa limitation. That's unfortunately not true, and those people will be breaking their visa conditions. So a lot of people assume that department will not find out because you're working on the ABN, you claim whatever you claim. Your department is nurturing relationship between Department of Home Affairs and ATO, Australian Taxation Office. So they will transfer the data, and if the student visa holder with work restriction are working on ABN and the income is quite high, it will be an indication that it's a breach of conditions. So do not get yourself into this situation. My advice, be prepared on what requirements you need to satisfy. If you need to get money, get these calculations before you come over here to make sure that you will have sufficient funds, or you will be working and you will sustain yourself well. Do not break the law. If you're going to be working, as I said, my suggestion is to work at least 20 hours per week, because everything less than 20 hours will not be considered for any other visas. So make sure you work at least 20 consistently. If you have a limitation of 24, you can still do 20. If you have 24 and you offer 24, that's fine. That's pretty much all for student visa and guardian visa. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and I'll have a look. Should I choose Australia or Ireland for my master's in computer science? I'm not dealing with Ireland at all, so I'm specialist for Australian visas. I can say to you that overall in the world, the IT industry is in crisis now, because it's a lot of professionals who keep coming in the market, and it may not be as much work. For this case, you need to do your real research, but in terms of computer science, as I mentioned, you may choose big cities, Sydney or Melbourne, for your career move. Then I would suggest choosing in the universities wisely, because sometimes more prestigious universities will have more opportunities within universities to enter the profession. They may have any internship programs, etc., and it will look better on your resume. If your budget is limited, there will be, of course, budget universities, but please be mindful that for those universities, they may have less to offer to support students and place them. So you will be on your own finding your job in Australia, and it's going to be a tough market. Can you please provide the average budget required for 1 year of education, excluding cost of university? This question more about the cost of life and all required spending. I will be able to post the link where you will be able to download our free student guide, where we had these calculations for 1 year or more, depending on how many people are in the application. So it's going to be easier then to talk about numbers. Am I right that time spent on student visa counts towards 4 years requirement for obtaining citizenship? Yes, you are correct. As I mentioned in the very beginning, so student visa or coming on a student visa will not automatically lead to permanent residency. However, all those times spent on student visa and graduate visa or guardian visa will be considered towards 4-year requirements, because it's a legit temporary visas. So applicant will spend time in Australia. Then for citizenship, you will have to spend 4 years in Australia and 1 year on permanent residency. So again, for citizenship, only time spent in Australia will not automatically give you the right to apply for citizenship. You will have to get permanent residency first, and then satisfy the residential requirements in 4 years in total. Thank you very much for watching. It was pleasure discussing some questions in the chat. So I will see you on my next live. It's going to be employer-sponsored visas tomorrow on Saturday. Thank you.